We're starting. There we go. We're live. We're live. Sunday evening, Monday morning for the Australians on the call. And Kylie, thank you so much for getting up and being willing to do this on a Monday morning. Thank God it's Monday, right?
Yay. Love Monday. Love Monday. Sun is shining. It's going to be a great week.
Fabulous, fabulous. Well, I am so excited to have you. You and I have met on Substack, and we had a phone call earlier this week, and I so enjoyed our conversation. And the more we talked, the more like-minded we were, and like-hearted. So I'm looking forward to today. Would you please introduce yourself to my audience? I know your audience already knows you.
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me on this morning. And hello to all of your listeners from Australia. I am calling from the Hunter Valley, which is northwest of Sydney on the eastern seaboard of Australia. And my name is Kylie Woodham, and I was born in Australia but have spent about 20 years living in Ireland, married an Irishman, had a farm there, and have 4 children who were all born in Ireland.
I'm slightly envious that you've been able to spend time in Ireland. My paternal grandmother left Ireland through the hunger, because of the hunger, and settled in Argentina. The diaspora.
Yeah, there are a lot of people who share Irish heritage through that period of time, especially.
Yeah. Well, good. And then I'm Christine Martin. I am in Texas, but specifically East Texas. It's currently 100 degrees Fahrenheit. I don't know what that is in Celsius, but it's hot and humid. And I am a rancher. I have raised multi-species, but more importantly, I'm an educator in holistic management that I was introduced to back in 2015. And it completely changed my life. And so I help guide and support land stewards who are implementing regenerative agriculture, who want to think about stewarding land more holistically. And that's what you and I found out, that we have a lot in common, Kylie.
That's right. Yes. Your training is a lot more specific and educated than mine. Mine was learnt on the hoof, so to speak.
That's better learning. That's better learning. So how were you introduced to holistic management?
When I started farming in Ireland was 2017. My past experience in farming was growing up on a farm in central west New South Wales up until I was about 11 or 12. And then I worked on a couple of farms after I left school. So when I started in Ireland, I wouldn't say that I had no knowledge, but I had the knowledge of a child. So I didn't really understand the realities, financial pressures, climatic pressures. So we started a pasture range egg business, which is where the hens are kept basically outside in movable houses. And I started listening nonstop to YouTube, and some of the people I listened to, Joel Salatin, who then recommended Alan Savory. So I started listening to everything I could find about Alan Savory online, which led me to also do the holistic management course. And I think I can remember the chapter where it discussed holistic decision making, and it was like a penny dropped and a door was opened that I could never walk back through again. It was a life-changing moment, because I think the holistic viewpoint doesn't just look at something in isolation. It opens up so many other possibilities. So that was really the first time I had heard of it or listened to anything, and it really blew my mind. I was literally amazed, gobsmacked by it.
Yeah, that was my experience too. So when I moved to Texas over 25 years ago, I bought 5 acres and I started homesteading, and I had a full-time job that I made good money. and then I realized that the food that I was eating was making me sick. So I thought, well, I've got 5 acres. Surely I can produce my own food. And realized it wasn't as easy. And I had a lot of soil issues. And eventually I've learned about taking soil tests and learned that my soil was very high salinity. So, which is why I couldn't grow anything. But anyway, I remember year 5, 6, 7, and 8 that I would look at my end of the year earnings and go, you know, I made very good money. Where did all my money go? Because it's certainly not in the bank, and it's certainly not in savings. And it ended up that it was on these pieces of equipment, on applications, on projects that, you know, I invested heavily, and they really didn't give me the results that, you know, were told to me, or that I picked up from an article, until I was scrolling on Facebook. This will date me because Facebook was the only app then, during lunchtime. And I saw this ad for this beginning farmer rancher course that was being hosted by Holistic Management International. And it was starting that Saturday. And, you know, I went online, and, you know, it was closed, but I was able to contact the program manager and gave her my sob story. And I'll never forget. She goes, "Oh, Christine, bless you. We need to get you in this course." And like you, Kylie, throughout the course, the number of aha moments I had was just exceptional, specifically the decision testing questions. You know, I had had a very successful career and did very well and enjoyed it. And we moved around, and so we were able to experience different cultures. But the reality was I was chasing the money, which is what we're supposed to do, right, in corporate. But my quality of life was atrocious, and my children were being raised by a nanny, because my job included dinners and, you know, travel and all this other stuff. And so the decision making questions were just life-changing, and then everything else. And this was a 6-month course that we did, and we met one weekend a month. And the other aspect that really convicted me were we were being hosted by operations that were actually implementing holistic management. And we would drive these backcountry roads, you know, and this is Texas, and Texas is very big, and we were fortunate that we were hosted during those 6 months by different operations all over the state. So it was a great way to see. But inevitably, we would drive these backcountry roads to get to the ranch that we were going to, and, you know, everything was overgrazed, or the ground was bare because it was cropland. And we would get to the operation, and they were green, and there was, you know, you could sense the fertility. And so we were actually got to see hands-on what the result of working and thinking holistically led to. And people shared the before implementing holistic management financial situation with the post holistic management framework, you know, application. So finances, quality of life. I'll never forget, there was one couple, they're in their 60s, and they were working really, really hard. And they were really proud that they had taken their first vacation in 10 years.
Yeah, that sums it up, doesn't it? Farming.
So even before I graduated from that course, I knew I had to share this with everybody that I could share it. So after I went home and implemented this and felt comfortable saying, okay, now I've worked with it, now I can maybe think about teaching, then I went through the training program.
Yeah, fantastic. Did you enjoy that process?
Yes, I did. So full disclosure, in the process of building my portfolio, which was required for the training, the training to be a professional certified educator is a 3-year program. And we had to prepare presentations, we had to teach, we had to have a learning community that gave us feedback on how we were sharing the concepts. And anyway, it was a long process. And in the process of trying to build my own case study, I had remarried by then. And I was trying to implement this myself. So I was trying to create my holistic goal with my husband, and he was like, "That's too woo. We don't need that. We don't need that." I'm like, "No, but I needed." Being a good nagging wife, he finally succumbed, and I sent him off to do the assignment of what is important to you, and then we'll come back and decide where we have the common ground. And it was a pivotal moment, because when he came back and we compared what we both valued, we really had nothing in common.
Yeah, I think we mentioned that the
Yeah.
last time we spoke,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
perhaps it's a good exercise for people to go through before they choose to stay together for the rest of their lives, because
So
every
important.
every situation, it can be applied in any situation, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And because this was a second marriage for both of us, so we didn't have kids in common, but we did go through counseling. And in counseling, he finally was honest enough to say, "I'm just waiting for her to get this out of her system." And
Ouch.
and it was ouch, but it was always like, "Thank you for finally being honest,"
Yeah,
because
yeah.
we had issues, and I could tell, right? But he, and so we talked about it more, and we ended up deciding that we loved each other, but we wanted different things out of life, and we were better off doing our own thing. And so in the process of all this training, I actually had a divorce and had to move the entire ranch, because I took all the equipment and the animals with me, because it was his family land. Anyway, so that delayed it a little bit, but what a better way to teach this than to say, this is how important the holistic goal is.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, lived experience, nothing beats that, right?
Right. And because I understand the principles and the practices, and I had the experience not only in doing it myself, but coaching and teaching others. When I moved onto my new property, I'm in a pretty non-brittle environment, so I get a lot of rain pretty often throughout the year. I get about 50 inches of rain. We'll convert that in the article to millimeters, and or no, centimeters, right? Centimeters.
Or in Australia, it's more like millimeters.
Is it?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's a lot of rain, but because I understood that we need to be in relationship with nature, we need to make sure ecosystem functions are working properly. Within 2 years of being here, with animals alone, I tripled my carrying capacity on my land. And then by year
it's
3,
like magic.
It's like magic. When it starts working, it's phenomenal. And by year 3, I halved the amount of hay that I needed to use to feed the animals during the winter. And by year 4, I didn't have to use any hay, because I had this stockpiled forage, and I had cool season grasses growing to supplement the stockpiled forage. So, it works, and you spend less money. You get to keep that money in the bank.
Yes, I think the one thing that we learned at Magna's farm in Ireland was the exponential increase in that productivity, and then the overabundance of that productivity, and
which is a whole problem in itself.
Yes, I mean, we ended up having to save half the farm for hay, because we couldn't keep up with the feed anymore. We just literally had to start making hay, which wasn't really for us. We ended up selling the hay. And I think when we went into the farm, we did not have any money to spend on it. So everything had to be about management practices.
Sure.
And the only investment really that we did was building the hen house and using electric fencing and setting up watering points. So that's the thing that really struck me, how much you can do with such little infrastructure.
With animals and a reel and polywire or netting fence and a solar charger.
Yeah, I mean, which worked even in Ireland, which doesn't have a lot of sun in the middle of winter. But also the relationship then, not just with the land, but also the stock that you're raising, because you're with them every day. You get to know their characters innately, and how your management changes then accordingly. I mean, yeah, just getting to know your livestock on that very personal level is so rewarding in itself.
Well, and I don't know how often you move your animals, but in the growing season, especially in the springtime, I'm moving them daily, if not twice daily, once in the morning, once late afternoon. And you get to know your animals, so that if that one cow starts becoming the last cow coming through the fence, moving to the new paddock, you start monitoring, saying, is something wrong with her? Right? Do we need to do something? But yeah, no, and that the thought when you said that also made me think of stockmanship. Right? When you're with them all the time, the human isn't a scary thing, and so it's so much calmer to move these animals. And
Yeah.
I've had instance where my neighbor who has a stalker operation, they maybe see a human twice a year, maybe more in the wintertime when they get fed. And I had two animals find the hole in our mutual fence, and I couldn't I mean, my animals between here and where my desktop monitor is, I can get close and even touch some of them. With these animals, I was meters away. And I couldn't herd them. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll herd them back into the gap. And I ended up having to call their manager, and he had to come with two cowboys and horses to separate out these two animals, to force them and put them in a trailer, because there was no way to herd them. I could herd my animals, right, with that low stress stockmanship.
Yeah. And I think animals like that would require quite a bit of retraining in the yards, and daily spending time with them and reacquainting them. We had a mix of cattle and sheep that we kept together, and that was quite humorous in itself, just watching the two species interact with each other and moving them, how you adapt and how I would always have the next day ready to go, so that because as soon as they see you coming up the paddock, they all mill around. They know that it's moving time. And if you've got to set up a fence, they're through the fence into an imaginary paddock that hasn't been built. Especially with sheep. And once one goes, they all just go. They don't care. I mean, the hens were different. The hens were much more laid back. They were happy. They were usually laying eggs by the time we were setting up fences, so they weren't bothered. But the pigs, again, you would have to have their next day fencing set up, ready to go. And once I moved them, then I would set up the following day's fence. But just even, I mean, with animals like pigs, that you get to know their personalities, and they do become very tame, which I found very difficult at the end to process them and package them up, because they become so familiar with you that they're almost like dogs, and they lie down on the ground for a scratch and expect a stomach rub. But I mean, that is also a really beautiful part of holistic management of animals, I feel, because that relationship really then creates such respect for the animal and how you process them and how you use every last piece of them, and how you share that knowledge with other people, not to the degree of maybe the personal relationship that you had with the pig, but definitely the care and respect that goes into looking after them, and how you treat that animal afterwards, what you use of it.
So let me ask you this. So I found that when the animals were waiting for me, when they heard me coming, because when they were waiting at the fence line, generally it's because I didn't give them enough forage to eat.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was also my way of saying, okay, I need to give them more today or tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
When they were still grazing, but they lifted their head when they saw me coming, and then they just stood there. I knew I had given them enough. But when they went to that fence line, it's like, okay, I need to give you more.
Okay. Yeah.
Did you
Very
ever
adaptive.
notice that?
I don't know. Maybe I was a bit mean with my feeding, that I would really make them work on the patch that they were on.
Okay.
So by
Okay.
the time it was time to move them, they were ready to get out of there.
Sure.
I think
So,
in
so you
Ireland,
were you were doing a severe graze, so you had them graze hard.
no, I would probably still only graze a third and
Okay.
leave probably two-thirds, but they would have trodden on it and walked around on it. I
Sure.
feel like if it was in Australia or somewhere that was a bit more arid, you probably couldn't do it like that. But there was always food there for them. They always
Sure.
had food, but I
Sure.
suppose they got used to being able to know when the person was coming and that it was a
Sure.
fresh feed. Um, and then through the winter we would be also um, giving them hay as well. They'd always have access to hay as
Sure.
well. So
Sure.
yeah, I wouldn't say they were starved. But they were
No, I'm
keen.
sure they weren't.
Yeah.
So, part of holistic plant grazing is planning for recovery, because Ireland is, as wet as it is. What was your typical recovery time in the summertime? I know in the spring it was probably a lot quicker than later on in the summer.
Yeah, I mean, in Ireland in the spring and summer, that could be as little as 30 to 60 days.
Oh, really? That long?
Well, I would leave it that long to
Okay.
let everything reestablish. So depending on, I mean, some of them would be, you'd have regrowth a week later. But
Sure.
I
Sure.
I always thought that if I gave it at least 30 days, then it was
Uh-huh.
giving everything the chance to root and go down deep. And we didn't have to go back any earlier than that anyway. So,
Sure. Sure.
and we were, I suppose, triple grazing. So we would
Uh-huh.
start with the cattle and the sheep, and
Right.
then we would go through with the pigs after that,
Okay. Okay.
and then we would follow up with the
Okay.
hens.
That's that context, right? You had three species grazing that same paddock.
Well, four, I guess, because cattle, sheep, pigs, and then hens.
Fair
Yeah.
enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
Mm,
Yeah. Yeah.
mm.
Yeah. Yeah. See, I started that way when I started. I started with the cattle, and then I would bring in the sheep, and then I would bring in the turkeys. I ended up doing
Yeah,
turkeys,
I
pastured
love
turkeys,
that. Yeah.
and they poop a lot, which was what probably helped me triple my carrying capacity within 2 years. But
Yes.
that's the rotation that I did. But I found that quality of life ended up becoming an issue for me. That the number of cattle I had versus the number of sheep I had versus, and the fact that at one point I had four turkey tractors going at the same time.
Yeah, that's a lot of
and
work.
and so it was a lot of work. So when I moved here, the first year, that's what I did. The second year, I said, I have other things to do, because I was operating the ranch by
Mm,
myself by this time.
yes.
And
Yeah.
so what I decided to do was I left the turkeys in one pasture and just rotated them around one pasture. And the cattle and the sheep went around the entire ranch, and even went through the pasture where the turkeys were. So
Mm.
at one point, I would have all three species in one paddock.
And did that work okay with your infrastructure with the cattle and sheep? They didn't make a mess of your turkey houses
No,
or?
no, no, they didn't. So depending on how old the turkeys were, because my pastured turkey tractors um, were enough to hold 50 birds, but only up until they were about 3 months old, and then they
Mhm.
got too big and they were too confined. So then I had to open the door and put netting fence So because I had the netting fence, it would protect.
Okay.
It would protect. But that was not, I had four tractors on the ground. So one of them had the 1 month old, one of them had the 2 months old, one of them had the 3 months old, and the other one had the 4 months old. So I
That
had
is
all
a
the
lot of work for one person,
yeah.
especially when you're taking them to places to process, and then you've got to direct sell and market, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of work.
I had a lot of energy. I can't, I do not do that now just because, I'm spending more time speaking and traveling for conferences and stuff. So, and finding people that are willing to do that much work has been a struggle. And my kids have gone off and done their own thing.
Yes, no more child labor.
No doubt. I did pay my daughter though. When she was here with me after the divorce, I did pay her, but she decided to pursue other things.
I think that's important too. During COVID, when we were in a lockdown situation, three of the kids were at home, and schooling was very difficult because one of our children was trying to do her leaving cert, which is a final exam of high school in Ireland, and we had very bad internet connection, and everyone was trying to do the same thing. So we actually said, let's just take a break. The kids are going to work on the farm and we'll catch up later. So at the end of every week, the kids would be involved with moving the tractors, collecting the eggs, packing the eggs, and then once a day going on a delivery run because we were farming. We were allowed to travel as far as we needed to. So the kids were all very involved, and at the end of the week, they would all put in their timesheets and the jobs that they had done that week, and then that money would get paid into their bank accounts. And it was a really beautiful, if you can say, a beautiful experience during COVID, because I know that it was very difficult for a lot of people, but for us, there was a whole lot of involvement with the family, with the kids, understanding how business works, what happens when you get paid. So that was, again, just a really great part of that management.
Good lessons. And it's what helps them recognize that this might be a possibility, to continue. They don't have to go, if they so wish, to be part of the operation. I think that's where, at least here in the US, we're struggling with that younger generation wanting to come back because, they see that these operations are reliant on subsidies, the amount of work that's involved, the quality of life.
Why would they do it?
Why would they come back when they have a job that they're comfortable in AC? They've got a salary every 2 weeks or whatever. And
yeah, I mean, that's really where the quality of life, if you can make it good quality, is so important. And I'm so grateful that we were able to give our children that opportunity, even if it was, I suppose when I started, I wanted them to understand where their food came from and the difference that food grown like that tastes in comparison to supermarket food. So I'm pretty sure that my kids now understand all of that, and they know the difference between good food and food that's not necessarily as good. And just watching them, I mean, they're probably still smarting from those times. They're probably not, oh my gosh, that was the best time of our lives. Hopefully, in 10 or 20 years, they might look back and say, do you know what? That actually was a really great experience. But I think the things that I watched them doing and how they developed during that period is just such a beautiful, special memory for me, because we started selling at our local market and a farmer's market, and we would sell out of the back of a horse trailer. So we would pack up the horse trailer with all of our produce, and then we would put the ramp down, we put our table out, put our gazebo up. And a lot of the time, I mean, Ireland is wet and it is cold, so a lot of the time it wasn't particularly pleasant. But just watching the kids, get up early, come with me, help unpack, and then listening to them at the market, listening to them talk to the customers and hearing them echo the things that I said, a lot of the time older people would come and they'd say, your eggs are very expensive. And then I'd explain to them how we grew the hens and what we did with them. And then the next week they'd come back and they'd say, whoa, those eggs are like, my grandmother's eggs, or the eggs I remember from growing up. And I could hear the kids then giving that sales talk to the people, and also knowing that it wasn't just a sales talk, that they were the ones who were packing the eggs, and they were the ones who were moving the hen houses and collecting eggs. And so for me, that was really special, watching that develop, and the way the children were able to really get involved and be a part of the business, watch it grow. I mean, we started with 10 hens, and we started selling them from a basket on the side of the road. And we ended up we used to keep all of the cash in a jar under the sink, in a biscuit jar. And the kids absolutely loved pulling out the cash, putting it on the kitchen table and counting it. And our youngest, who was probably only 9 or 10 at the time, he pulled it all out, laid it out and counted it. And he said, oh, Mum, there's like €150 here. It's so much money. And I said, well, what do you think we should do? Should we go out for a nice meal? But he could see the financial return from what was happening. And he said, let's get more hens.
That's amazing. Oh, that's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, he probably didn't expect that we would end up with 1,000 hens, but but I think those even just very basic business skills.
Sure.
And accounting and watching the money come in, and then watching the feed bill when you went to the store to pick up grain. And so, those things are ingrained in them. They're part of their fabric.
Yeah. And I saw the same thing with my daughter too. After the divorce, she was with me and she accompanied me to the farmer's market. And she had actually ended up being a better saleswoman than I was, because it'd been years of talking about food and quality of food and the ingredients that we put in our food. And when I started this over 23 years ago now, when I realized that the food that I was eating was making me sick, I had to find feed that didn't have any soy, because we ended up both being allergic to soy. And I was traveling hours to find this feed. And so, sharing all that story and, explaining to the customers, even though by regulation we had to wash our eggs to sell, we never washed the eggs, and explaining about the bloom and all this other stuff. And then the typical comment, your eggs are not brown. They're different colors. Are you dyeing the eggs? Anyway, all of that stuff. But yeah, and she left because she decided to pursue another path, but now she's a mom, and I see her implementing all the same things that I've been preaching on her with my grandson. So I feel very blessed.
Yes, you can tick that box.
Yes, I can tick that box. Tick that box. So we all have a journey, right? I've shared that I'm no longer doing the multi-species production. I am no longer selling direct to consumer. Life changes, right? The journey, you have to adjust. How was the holistic goal? How was the decision testing questions helpful in figuring out, okay, what do we do next?
At what point are you talking?
Well, you shared with me that you left Ireland to come to Australia for, you decided that Australia was where you wanted to be, and then your husband, you all went back, but you came back for schooling or something.
Yeah.
were these concepts, was this part of your decision or not?
Definitely. I think that framework definitely helped me make the decision I did, because when we started Magnus Farm, we were living in a tiny cottage and there were 6 of us, and we started with nothing, and we built up the business to a point where we were selling into 3 Michelin star restaurants.
That's
We
amazing.
were our bone broth that we made from our spent hens won a big award in Ireland, the Chef's Choice Award at the Irish Food Awards. We were exporting our eggs to Dubai, which was kind of crazy when I look back at it.
How did you do that?
I think somebody who was an expat living in Dubai came across our eggs, and they just put an order through a import-export company. They just rang us and said, we have a client who wants your eggs. So we were like, okay, we don't know what that looks like. And, then you have to get special
permits and packaging
permits
and everything. Oh my goodness.
And that kind of blew my mind, because I used to always just think, well, they're just eggs. But of course, they're not just eggs. They were Magnus Farm eggs. And
right.
One of my friends in Ireland used to say, tease me and say, oh, here comes the girl who invented eggs. And then we because we didn't have any inputs except for our feed, really, we were able to make a profit from year one, and we were able to increase that profit by 60% every year on year. And another property came up that was much more suitable for us, a bigger house, a bit more land, and was already certified organic. So we put all our figures together, and we were able to, with a bit of help, purchase this farm. And we started on the farm. It was great. And then our child number 2, child number 3, both wanted to move back to Australia and did move back, and were living with friends. And then child number 4 was fairly keen to move back as well. And I think then when you look at stuff through a holistic viewpoint, you could say, well, we've spent all this money, we've bought this farm, the kids are doing their thing. But for me, I think the kids are the thing. The kids really are the top of my priority list. And that's why we started in the first place. And I then started thinking, well, what's the point of having all of this here if the kids don't want to be here? So I guess putting that plan of the farm on ice and just letting it sit there. So Billy, my husband, is still there on the farm, and he is doing things more aligned with his past life, which is the horse industry, horse breeding. So the farm is now carrying horses instead of sheep, cattle, pigs, and hens. So I think with that sort of framework in mind, you can really look at your priorities and say, well, what is most important to me right now? And for me, that was our children. I mean, Matilda, our eldest, is still in Ireland and working in the film and the film industry, which is fabulous, and just so proud of her doing her thing. But she's older, she's 25. So I just felt this was my priority. And in another 3 or 4 years, this won't be necessary for it to be my priority quite as much. So what that looks like, again, I'll put it through the framework and decide, what is best for me, what is best for our farm, what is best for the land. And it mightn't look like Magnus Farm used to look like, with me moving houses every day and, in the car and working like 20-hour days sometimes. I hope it looks different to that, because I loved that, but it's probably not going to be, in another 5 years, I'll be getting closer to 60, and maybe that's really not what I want to be doing then. So I think that framework just simplifies everything. It just is, it's just an incredible framework for you to make all sorts of decisions, all life decisions. And I'll never forget listening to the Alan Savory book and doing the holistic management course, where they spoke about talking to a family around succession farming. And when everybody sat down and wrote down what they all wanted, it wasn't the farm. So everybody had been working towards this, how do we hand it over and what does that look like? And it turned out that the parents didn't necessarily want to stay on the farm and the kids didn't either. And so the farm was sold. And I just think that takes such pressure off everybody, because the clarity that it offers is so unbelievably important, and it just makes such a difference. So if you say to yourself, well, it's just about the economic returns, I am going to make money out of this and I have put all this time and effort into it. But then when you take a step back and you look at what your family dynamics are, and that as a parent, for me, that was my highest priority, to be there, you know, with my children as they finish this stage of their lives. So that doesn't mean you can't go back to,
of course,
yourself, but right now that's where it sits.
And it will likely look different.
Yes, but I think generally I will be proud of this period in my life as well. And it has given me great clarity looking. I've always wondered, after applying those holistic practices in Ireland, what it looks like in Australia. And because it's such a brittle environment and it's arid, you know, I look at that and I think, whoa, how would you manage it in this context? Because if you don't have water, everything becomes a little bit irrelevant and you have to make decisions based on that. And then the scope of the size of the country here, you know, we live on a 10,000 acre farm in the Hunter Valley. It's not ours, obviously, but I mean, the scope of that, how do you manage it? But I watch the farmer who manages it here and what he does, you know, moving stock and then selling stock and then buying stock and then dealing with feral animals like pigs and deer are a big problem here, ruining fences. And then obviously we have native animals like kangaroos who can be very destructive as well.
Very destructive.
Yeah, and you don't have those challenges in Ireland. You know, we just didn't have any. You don't have to think about those sorts of things. So it's been a really interesting arc progression. Yeah.
Sure. Kylie, do you want to talk about how the holistic goal that you developed when you first started all this looks different than it is now? Because it's not a static document, is it? It's a living document that gets revisited and revised accordingly. For me, when I divorced and it was my daughter and I, we sat down and we developed our mutually agreed goal, holistic goal. And then when she decided to pursue another path, then I went back and revisited that, because now it's like, well, I don't have to consider her at the moment because she's not part of the management team. And you know, now I could do whatever I wanted to. But even then, where I was 6 years ago to where I am now, my holistic goal looks different because I've realized things and I'm interested in other aspects of stewardship. And so it's been an adapted document that is constantly being revised and looked at.
And I love that it's also a baseline record of where you're at that point in time. So when you go back over them, it's just such an interesting exercise to look back and say, wow, that's where I was at that time. Yeah. That's what was important to me then. And then to be able to say, it's not as important. And adaptive is such a good word because, I mean, it can change day by day. You know, you fell over and hurt your knee and you're like, what am I doing this for? I'm busting a gut to do these things and I'm just breaking myself. Or you might just say, this is what I want to do until eternity because I want to be doing this for the rest of my life. And sometimes those changes happen without us even realizing. I mean, my youngest son is 18 and stands at 6'3" and, you know, big, strong, gym, rugby playing, And I look at him and my other son and my daughter as my babies, and that they need looking after. And, you know, they joke and say, do you know, Mum, you don't need to look after us like that anymore. And it's almost like a bit of a, oh my gosh, you're right. Like, whoa, how did that happen? And then that makes you reevaluate things. And that always is going to look different for people. What do you want out of life? Is it economic return? For me, that's not the goal so much anymore, but that's probably coming through a little bit of security of paying off the house and the farm, and starting to look at what does that look like for me, and how can I offer what I learned to other people. And I think that's why what you're doing is so important, because you're not just talking the talk, you've walked the walk, you've done it. And to be able to offer other people that clarity is such a gift, I think, because it's so often that we have our heads down and we are just, you know, burrowing along and going hell for leather. It's only when somebody asks you to step out of that and just say, you know, have you thought about doing something for yourself? Or I remember somebody saying to me, you know, when was the last time you went for a haircut? And I was like, I don't have time for a haircut, you know. And it was, well, you need to take care of yourself. You need to go for a cup of coffee with your friends, like get off the farm, have a shower, girl, do your hair. Yeah. And it's just so important, I think, to have that exterior person who can help you along that, and just, you know, give you the perspective. I was really lucky actually in Ireland to be part of a coaching platform called Acorns, and it was run by the Department of Ag, but it wasn't just for farmers, it was for all women in business. Okay. And we met probably once every 2 or 3 months. And at the beginning and the end, we would have a catch up together, and people would tell stories and about their business. And I just remember thinking so many times, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this meeting. But then when you got in the car and drove, showered and got into something nice. For me, it was a dress, or, you know, do my hair, and then meet with these other women who are almost like your board members, who would say, what are you up to? And then you would actually say, oh my gosh, we have done quite a lot. We have moved along. I feel like I'm not going anywhere. But stepping out of that and then looking back is just so important in, not just farming, in everything.
In everything, yeah.
Everything. Yeah. Especially rewarding yourself of how far you have come, to have somebody else to map it out for you and say, look at what you did, and, you know, how far you've come, because you're always looking for the next, we're going to get another 100 hens, or we're going to get more pigs, or we're going to sell into a supermarket, or whatever it is that it is for you. So yeah, going back to your question about the document, it's just such a relevant piece of equipment. People talk about business plans, but you know, that forms part of it, I guess. It's so important.
Yeah, it's what creates the mission statement or vision statement, or, you know, business wise. So Kylie, you mentioned something that I think has been really important for me, and the more I work with female land stewards, because generally that's who I attract, we've been so conditioned to be carers. You know, we're so good at giving of ourselves, and, you know, whether it's raising our children or taking care of the land, you know, taking care of a business, that, to your point, we're not taking care of ourselves. And, you know, when I was finally able to do this ranching full time, I was so excited, because this had been something that I'd been working towards for many years. And I was passionate, and I was gung ho, and I was, you know, like you, putting 18 to 20 hours a week or a day on stuff, and driving all over the place, because I'm in Texas, and in Texas, half an hour is around the corner. And, you know, processing was 3 hours away. Picking up feed was an hour and a half away, and you know, multi-species processing dates. I was constantly on the go, and until I realized that what was my wake-up call was, I shared that I do pasture turkeys, and they were my highest profit margin enterprise. And I remember taking the birds to the processor, and here in Texas, you drop them off and you can either wait until they're ready, or I would come back home and then go and pick them up. And I came home with the batch of turkeys, which is about 50 turkeys that was cut up into parts. And I walked into my walk-in freezer, and I had no shelf space to put them because I still had inventory from last month. And I'm like, wait, what's going on? And then I started recognizing that, oh yeah, I had to pay this processing bill on a credit card because I didn't have the cash because I wasn't moving the turkey parts. So I was so busy managing everything else, and it's just me. And then it dawned on me, well, my turkey sales are not what they were. People aren't buying my turkey cuts. And then it was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? Right? I'm the income's not coming in. I have bills that are coming in. How am I going to pay it? And I'm thankful I learned it, but I realized this about myself, which was a huge wake-up call, was when I get into financial stress, my tunnel vision completely goes to, my blind spot gets so much wider. And I was so concerned about how I was going to pay the bills. Yes, I had to figure out what to do with all this inventory, but I was so concerned about paying the bills that my creativity just went tanked. And there was all sorts of opportunities that happened on my blind spot that would have helped me, but I was so focused. So that was a wake-up call for me, going, wow, I need to take care of myself so that I have accountability, or I have support. Then I decided that I needed a bookkeeper so that they could give me a profit and loss every month, so that it wasn't going to catch me by surprise. But that nervous system regulation and was such a wake-up call for me to say, if I'm going to be doing this properly, I need to take care of myself. And that's where I came up with one of the content pillars that I have on Substack is regeneration must start within.
Yeah, I think sometimes for different people it works different in a different line, as in, I think for me it was the opposite, as in probably likewise for you too, but that the regeneration for me was about trying to meet something that I had held for a long time, and by hell or high water I was going to make it happen, and I was going to make it profitable, because again, I'd come from a corporate job, and I wanted to make sure that I could still help support my family. And then that can lead to burnout too,
Sure.
Because one of the reasons what helped me make my decision was that I was so overwhelmed and exhausted, and trying to basically do what I had left the corporate world for, which was trying to be a mum and do the corporate stuff as well. And this time I was trying to farm and, be a mum just day to day, making sandwiches, school drop off, sports. And it just, it becomes overwhelming, because the farming part of it on its own is overwhelmingly busy, especially when you're selling direct to clients and you're processing. Right. And so I think that part of it was pushed on me. It was like, okay, you better start looking after yourself, because this is unsustainable. You just are unable to keep this up. And I think a lot of people see people online, like brilliant people like Joel Salatin, who have just brilliant systems in place, and they have a lot of other people helping them. But he's
got a fleet of interns that come in every year.
Yeah. And I respect that people want to go there and they want to learn. But when we try and do everything like that, it's it's almost impossible because it just is so overwhelming. So to kind of then put it back into context, at some point you have to say, I need to look after me. I need regeneration. I need something that is going to make me grow and feel sustained. And trying to do everything and be everything is not sustainable. So
we can't do it. No, it's impossible, at least sustainably.
Well, a lot of people look at what we did on Magnus Farm. I won Farmer of the Year in 2020 and got to travel quite a bit around Europe and visit the other farmers who had won the same award. And that's kind of led to different things where people recognize the farm or recognize you and they say, wow, I want to do what you did. And the first thing I want to say to them is don't, because you don't want to burn out. You don't want to be exhausted. Because from the outside, the marketing spin looks fabulous.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Everything's fabulous. I didn't turn the camera around and film myself crying in a corner, when a fox had come.
I want to quit. I want to quit.
Yeah, I hate this. Cold and I'm wet and I'm poor and the cattle have got out and I'm trying to get them back from the main road. And so I think that is so important to include yourself in that plan and include yourself about care and taking care of yourself, because we just, as women, I don't know, I guess it's part of our innate maternal nature to look after things, but at the core of that, we must look after ourselves. And
Sure.
That doesn't need to mean a week long at a spa, drinking champagne by the pool. I mean, for some people, it might just be getting your hair done or getting your nails done or something that just makes you feel yourself, a coffee with a friend or a glass of wine with a friend. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but it's just so important to schedule that time in for yourself. Do something that you love doing, cooking without the need to cook, or, baking, sewing. Yeah.
And as I've worked with people, I find myself talking about context, including our capacity. Not only financial capacity, because some of us have a specific budget that we can deal with, and so the financial capacity, the emotional capacity, because let's be honest, it can be very hard. Animals die, animals get sick. They're very frustrating sometimes, and you're just like, but then also the energetic capacity. I shared earlier in this conversation, I don't have the energy now at 60 that I had 6 years ago.
Definitely. Yeah.
And so, if you were to ask me, Christine, okay, let's build up, let's size up the business again and get more cattle and get the sheep and get the poultry. I'm like, not by myself. If I have a partner that wants to come in, a young person that wants to come in, then possibly. But I know myself better now to know I can do that or not.
Yeah. I mean, everything has context, right? And when you put it on a piece of paper and look at it and say, well, that's 12 hours work right there.
Right.
What are you comfortable with that? Do you have other people in your family that need your attention? And if the answer is yes, I am comfortable with that, and no, I don't have other things, go for it if that makes your heart full.
Right.
But I think then when you really ask people, what is your goal? Is it financial freedom? Is it, a yacht sailing around the Bahamas? Is it, in our dreams? But I think, is it to educate your children? Is it to just have a healthy diet and lifestyle? And then that changes all the time, doesn't it?
Changes. Yeah.
Once you start eating healthy food, I mean, for me, food that I had grown myself was just then a lifelong commitment. It was like, well, I don't care wherever I am, I can grow something for myself. Even if that is on a windowsill in an apartment, I am always going to grow something for myself. And then, you know, in 5 years' time, that might change. I might be living next door to a beautiful farmer's market where I say, well, there you go. I'm never going to grow anything again. I suppose it just changes. That's the beautiful thing about the document. It's not set in stone. It's not, you know, you must now stick with this for the next 20 years of your life. Or, yeah, that's what I love the most about the holistic framework. And like you said earlier, it's just a work in progress, but getting it out of your head and onto a piece of paper is just so important.
And especially important if you're in partnership, right? If it's you and a spouse, you and a sibling, you and parents, or you and children, right? Because things run much smoother when we're all on the same page. And we discuss, okay, we're going to disagree, and how do we handle it when we disagree? You know, so this is part of that management aspect that when we talk regenerative agriculture, it doesn't recognize that there's a management that needs to be involved with the personnel, with the finances, with marketing, with grazing, all of this aspect.
Yeah. I mean, that's important if you're working in partnership, that you even know what the page looks like, let alone being on the same page.
Yeah. And as I work with people, you know, people have a vague idea of what they want their life on the land to look like, but they don't have the specifics. And I find that we need to know the specifics. You know, and my question always to them is, if I suggested you spray glyphosate, would that be acceptable for you? Oh, no. And I'm like, okay, there's a value right there that is important to you. You know, and so even coming down to having people recognize what is important to them or not is a process.
Definitely. And it's a realization too, because I mean, growing up on our farm, I know that there was spraying being done, and that there was probably a lot of chemical being used. So I didn't actually know that wasn't the right thing to do. And the first year that we moved onto the farm, it was infested with docks, you know, the plant with the very deep taproot, which was again saying that, help, I'm compacted and I've been overused and hard hooved animals. And the first thing I did was went in there and got somebody to spray it. And I think the thing that hit me most was watching how quickly everything died, as in how quickly the docks just sagged and went over. And I remember thinking, something is not right about this. That is so violent. And then going to my first regen ag and listening to somebody talk about that, and how they said it's not just the docks that it's killing everything else in the soil as well.
Right.
And it was like one of those moments when you're, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. You know, it was like, how could I have done that and not realized? And then it was again like a door being opened. I will never do that again. I will never do that. But I guess that was ignorance beforehand. You know, I just didn't know any better.
And we all start there, you know.
Yes.
We're all in that boat, because the concept of regenerative agriculture, the indigenous people have been aware of this, but colonization, patriarchy, industrial revolution has shifted, which ends up leading to, and this is my biggest frustration, is Regen Ag has done a fabulous job of helping us understand there's complexity to working with nature, but the reductionist mindset still means it becomes a checklist rather than, these are the principles, and let's determine, you know, how we're going to use these principles based on the concept, based on the context.
And that's why I love it's so adaptive. It's not like on the 1st of September you must plant this, on the 2nd of September you must spray, you must do this and it's so adaptive, you know, from paddock to paddock. Even it's not even farm to farm, it can be paddock to paddock. And I think that's what's so beautiful about this system too.
So with your experience with the curly dock, and by the way, did you know that curly dock is really high protein content?
I do now. Yeah.
Yeah. So was that your turning point to say Mother Nature knows best, and whatever's happening is because this is the best that Mother Nature can do for right now, i.e., weeds are Mother Nature trying to cover herself or fix whatever imbalance is in the soil?
I think that was the beginning of it, because then I started reading and listening more, and then the principle of holistic grazing, I mean, that was another light bulb moment. I think it was more of a graduation than an actual moment. I know that I was impacted by the day after the docs, or even the afternoon of the docs. It was just like, whoa, couldn't believe it. But then it was like a door had been opened. And after that, it was just another piece, another piece, another piece of the puzzle, understanding why the docs were there, like what made the docs be there. And then I think the next big moment for me was the gut soil microbe connection, because I remember the first time I heard that and just thought, what? Like, that seems to me like such a obvious thing once I'd heard it. It was like, how come I didn't know that? And, I went to ag college and nobody taught us that. And why did I not know this? It was almost like, somebody said, did you know white bread exists when you've been eating brown bread all your life? Not that I eat white bread anymore, but it was like just an incredible realization that then felt so obvious that it was like, I can't believe you didn't know that. And then just wanting to learn more and more about that. So, yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? Because I still sometimes go to Regen Ag events and think, well, I think I know just about everything there is to know. And then you have a session after session after session that you're just like, oh my gosh, how did I not know that? And incredible. And that's probably what I love so much about this, is that I think you could just keep learning and learning till the day you die. The things that you learn are just so enriching and beautiful as well.
Yeah. And I agree with you. What I love is that the recognition that we don't understand nature to the extent that that we think we do, and nature is always surprising us with new facts. Do you know who Dr. Elaine Ingram is the founder of the Soil Food Web?
Yeah,
and she had been studying the soil for over 30 years, and I have listened to many of her recent podcasts before she passed. That she said she's still learning how all of this biology works underground, because it is so complex, and so infinite.
It always reminds me of looking up to the stars in the galaxy and thinking, we know what's going on up there. The soil is a bit like that too. It's so complex and so adaptable, and also the ability for it to repair, for us to make small management changes, and how quickly it can actually repair itself is amazing.
Yeah. And the important distinction is, humans either think we can control nature, or humans can think we're in relationship with nature. And generally the outcome when we're in relationship with nature means productivity increases better. We end up with more profit in the bank, that we, have better quality products being produced out of that soil.
Yeah, exactly.
So Kylie, given this holistic mindset, how has it impacted your whole outlook of how you view things? Because I know it's been completely a game changer for me, how I look at things, even if it's not agricultural related or health related.
I guess it's a little bit like that. I look at myself as something like akin to a compost pile, and the things that I am bringing into that compost pile are either useful and positive and are going to bring abundance, or they're a rubber band or a piece of plastic that doesn't really belong there. So a lot of the time I think, and it comes down to day-to-day invitations to even hang out with specific people that I think, is this enriching for me? Is this something that's going to bring me, I'm not talking about financial, am I going to make an alliance with them that's going to make money? It's more like, what will this bring me? And if it's something, like a gang hanging out together, is this what I need? Is this what I really need today? Or am I better off being in my garden? Or am I better lighting the fire and reading a book in front of it? Or do I really need to get in the car and go with this person and have 2-hour-long chats because I know that's going to be great for me, just getting out in the sunshine? So I think I probably apply it to just about everything that happens. I've become much more minimalist in my lifestyle. So that comes right back to looking at things that I might bring into my home. And we live in quite a simple cottage, and it's small. And I often think, where will that bring me joy? Do I have space for that? And if it's a yes and a yes, then yeah, it comes in. Otherwise I say, yeah, do you know what? I'm just going to walk on past that. So I think I probably apply it unconsciously to just about everything. I mean, an example of that was, I did go for a 2-hour drive with a friend of mine. We went to a small farm field days, and I ended up coming home with 20 little seedlings, little native plants. And my friend said to me, but you're only renting, and a lot of these things are long-term plants. They're not going to be, a bush or a hedge in 5 years' time. And for me, it was, but how beautiful to leave something of us behind. Sure. And how beautiful that one day somebody will get shade on the house because of this tree that I planted, and that it doesn't necessarily have to benefit me, and just the joy of planting them, putting them in the soil. And so I think things like that, it guides every decision that you make in your life. And right down to, growing our own food. I grow a lot of food, and it's not to be, it genuinely gives me so much joy going out. I mean, even if I didn't get to eat the stuff, I actually love growing it, and I love giving it away to friends and sharing it with people. And so I think I probably apply those principles all the time, every day, unconsciously.
So we've been at this for a little bit over an hour, and I've been asking you questions. Did you want to share anything that came up through our conversations? Do you have a question for me that you'd like to ask?
No, I think I've been talking so much, Christine. I'm beginning to lose my voice.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough.
But if anyone else has any questions, yeah, of course, I'd love to answer anything. And hello to everybody who's there.
Yes, listening. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. I am so pleased that you took time out of your day to be on the live with me.
It's a pleasure.
I've enjoyed this conversation, and hopefully we can do it again, because I think we have a lot that we can talk about.
Yeah, likewise, Christine. I've absolutely loved getting to know you, and reading about you and watching what you're doing is just really inspiring. So yeah, I'm looking forward to where our friendship and shared knowledge is going to go.
Yeah, and I'm looking forward to seeing, all the things that you'll be getting into, because in our previous conversation you shared you had a few opportunities, so that's exciting.
Yeah. Oh yeah, actually I'll mention, I did write a book a couple of years ago. This one, I don't know if you can see that, but that's actually me, Soil Sister, Farming for Our Future. And I think the reason I wrote that book was I was coming in contact with a lot of people who didn't have the same knowledge that I had around regenerative food systems, and I wanted to be able to hand over something that they could read and get an understanding of, probably in 10 minutes. So I wrote it as a children's book, but it's not really a children's book. It's something that people could read very quickly. So yeah, I'm looking forward to maybe writing a few other things around that theme as well.
Beautiful. Wonderful. Well, good. I have it on my order list, but I've made a promise to myself that I'm not going to buy another book until I read some that are already on my bedside table.
Can relate. Yes, can relate.
Well, thank you again, Kylie. I hope you have a wonderful week this week, and
Thank you.
And spending this hour and a bit with me.
Yeah, you're very welcome, Christine. I feel very honored. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.